I was born in Toronto, Canada, but I grew up in Sudbury, Ontario, which is about 4 hours north of Toronto, kind of a small city of about 80,000 people at the time. My father was an entrepreneur, and both sets of grandparents were entrepreneurs, and I was groomed, as were my brother and sister, all to be entrepreneurs. And we've all run our own companies for the last 15 to 25 years. So I grew up in this very entrepreneurial household where I was shown that having a job was a bad idea. Being an entrepreneur was never about the money. It was about controlling your time and having the freedom to do what you wanted, when you wanted, and work on the things that you wanted. So my dad really taught us that by being in charge of our own time, we would then make as much money as we wanted, but it was always around the freedom that we chased. And by the time I was about 18 years old, I'd had about 16 different entrepreneurial ventures. I could still rattle them all off to this today and all the lessons that I learned from each of them. And then when I was 20 years old, I had 12 full-time employees. So when I was just in my second year of university, I started running my first operational company, with 12 employees. And when I moved out at 22 years old, I had about 18 employees at the time.
And what was one key challenge that you had to overcome to achieve success in your life?
Back then, it was the fact that entrepreneurship was not cool. Today we almost have this very tainted view of entrepreneurs because of the rise of the dot-com era, and then now the second rise of the internet boom, where being an entrepreneur was cool and everybody wants their kids to be entrepreneurs. Well, I grew up in an era where being an entrepreneur, we were kind of vilified. We were these greedy capitalist little kids who didn't fit in. And so I had a challenge around that where I thought it was cool and I thought it was fun, but aunts and uncles and neighbors thought I was this strange kid who was always doing these strange things, and I just thought it was natural. So I had to overcome that strange stigma. I also really had to overcome a school system that was rigged against me. I didn't have the same intellectual capacity. I wasn't able to memorize information. And I have 17 of the 18 signs of attention deficit disorder. So I see everything that's happening, and I'm massively focused on all of these other things, which made it very hard just to pay attention and focus. So I felt like I was emotionally abused in the school system for 18 years, where I was told I was stupid and wasn't paying attention and was struggling. So I've had to really overcome some of those insecurities.
And yet now you're like the visionary behind the COO Alliance, helping people that do have very big job. What made you decide to really focus on building the COO Alliance?
I guess there's two things. One is I had played the second in command role 3 times, the third being 1-800-GOT-JUNK. But I was also the second in command for what became Boyd Auto Body and Gerber Auto Collision in the US, and then also a private currency company. And when I was playing these second in command roles, I got to see that I was doing something very important. And the only place that I could go and learn how to either learn more skills or learn leadership capacity or to even build my connections and network were being in these entrepreneur groups, right? I could be in the McKay CEO forums, but I wasn't a CEO, so I wasn't allowed to join. Or I could get invited to these events like a YPO event or a Genius Network event, but I didn't fit in because I was the second in command. So I saw the need for second in commands or COOs to have skill sets and networks. And then I also saw that there really wasn't any that were out there doing it. So I just figured I would set it up for them. But it was a group of my clients that wanted me to start it together. So I grabbed a bunch of CEOs that I used to coach, which I don't really do anymore. And I got all of their COOs together, and I saw that I didn't even have to be the expert. I just had to facilitate conversations and get them communicating with each other.
I just think it's remarkable that you've decided to focus on how to help COOs. And I think that it's one of the most misunderstood roles in business today still. And so I'm so thrilled that you're raising awareness of what it is and what it's not. And honestly, your book to me was a game changer when I was listening to the podcast, and then I got the book. I was just relieved and excited about it. So I know we don't have that much time on this podcast, but just simply put, what's your take on the role of the COO?
The role of the second in command is to be the balance or the yin and yang to the CEO. So the COO has to be really good at and really love working on the areas of business that the CEO is really bad at and doesn't like working on. So as an example, when I was the COO for 1-800-GOT-JUNK, I ran sales, marketing, operations, PR, the call center, at one point franchise sales, all of our global operations, but I did not run IT and finance. Now, if I looked at Matt Wool from Acceleration Partners, one of our COO Alliance members, He happens to run IT and finance and does not run sales and marketing because he's not good at it and his CEO is. So the COO role is almost an undefined role, but if we were to define it, is we have to be good at all the stuff the CEO is not.
So let's talk about what motivates you today to be an inspiring leader in all aspects of your life.
On the business side of my life, it's that I see so many business people almost like a fly trying to get out the window, and they keep banging their head on the window. Because I was not the smart kid in school, I had to find the shortcuts. I had to follow the path of least resistance. I had to find the cheat sheets, and I had to find the teaching assistants who could give me the shortcuts to do well in the exam, because I couldn't sit in and memorize it all. And I see businesses today and business leaders today struggling with those same things. Interestingly, I started another community 6 months ago called the Ops Spot, which is an online mastermind community for anybody that works in operations, because there's nowhere for them. So this is for managers, directors, and VPs to communicate and collaborate. So I'm trying to give these people the shortcuts and the communities so they don't end up dead on the windowsill, right? That's number one. On the rest of my life, it's really recognized a couple of years ago that none of this stuff actually matters. This is just what we do to make money. That we're all just, as Ram Dass said, we're all just walking each other home. We're all going to die. So we really have to enjoy the journey, and we really have to look to impact other people and inspire other people, and also enjoy our own lives. I was at a Genius Network event where you and I were both members, and I was sitting with the CEO, this is about 8 years ago, and I said, how would your kids describe you? And this was Dean Graziosi, and he said, oh, my kids would describe me as a great thought leader and a good real estate guy and a good internet marketer. I'm like, that's really how you want your kids to talk about dad? And he started to cry, and I started to cry. And I realized that both of us at the time weren't role modeling the kind of human that we wanted our kids to become. So that was a game changer for me, that if you ask my kids, what does your dad do today? They would say he travels, he likes hanging out with friends, he goes to festivals, he likes to party, he likes to do dinner parties, he spends a lot of time with his wife, he loves our activities, and what he does to make money is these things. And I think I want people to recognize that we can have both, that you can build an amazing company, you can be an amazing business person, but you don't have to do that at all costs. And I think that there's an opportunity for us to do that. And then third is for us as leaders to remember that our job is to grow people and to really care about our people. You know, one of the reasons why we got 1-800-GOT-JUNK to rank as the number 2 company in all of Canada to work for was we really cared about the dreams and fears and insecurities of our people, where we cared about them more than almost any of their friends or family did. And because we really cared about them as people, they went through brick walls for us to build the company. So recently at a COO Alliance event, one of the exercises I did, and you should do this at some of your big McKay Forums events, I had everyone in the room write down one thing on a Post-it note that they were deeply struggling with. So, you know, people wrote down, I'm struggling with a brain tumor, I'm struggling with my divorce, I'm not in love with my spouse, one of my kids is sick, I'm almost bankrupt, whatever. And they all wrote their one thing down on a Post-it note. They didn't put their name on it. And then I had them crumple up the Post-it notes and throw them into the middle of the room. And then I had them all stand up and go into the middle of the room and pick up a Post-it note. And then we went back and each person read out the Post-it note. And what they realized was that everyone is struggling, right? We're all so often worried about ourselves that we forget that every employee, every marketing person, every salesperson, every executive assistant, every person on the production floor are all struggling with something about their humanity. And if we can care about them more than we care about their business, they'll end up caring about our business more than they ever would. So I think I'm trying to role model a little bit more of that in the world as well, because I think we can kind of go on tilt at times.
Well, and that's one of the things I love about you, Cameron, is that you are all about how can you show up every day as the best version of yourself. And you're one of the very few people that runs a peer group organization, much like I do, where we have a common purpose and mission, which is how do we bring people together so that they can help each other solve their toughest problems, whether it's business, family, or personal. And it's judgment free because we all have challenges. And especially in today's world, it's really not about sucking it up and trying to do it all yourself. It's about get yourself connected to other people who have been there and done that before so you can save time and achieve your goals, all goals. and with greater ease and greater fulfillment and joy.
Well, I think what is becoming even more powerful than we've ever noticed before about the communities that we run and why it's so important for CEOs to be in them, or COOs or operations people to be in these communities, is we all grew up in an era where we had to be the smart person. We had to study hard, memorize all the information, because there was no internet, there was no Google, right? Anyone who's working in a company today didn't have access to the internet to solve all of our problems. Well, that game has changed now. We no longer have to be the smart person in the room. As Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy wrote in their book, Who Not How, we have to know who the smart people are so they can help us solve our problems. We now have to be able to collaborate better, communicate better, work together as a group, brainstorm. We have to be better at recruiting and interviewing and onboarding of global talent. We have to be better at kind of problem solving together. And those are skills that we can all learn. But it's not about being that radical self-reliant or the smartest person in the room anymore. It's about making sure that we're in the right rooms.
Yeah. And leading with generosity, which is a huge philosophy we have at Macasio Forums, is surround yourself with game changers, people that have a proven roadmap to success, are willing to share it, and be a game changer for other people.
That's important. That I think it's a distinction that I don't want you to skip over. When your members show up and trying to give to others, that's when they're going to receive the most. It's when people show up in a forum or a mastermind trying to take, trying to learn, trying to absorb, trying to figure it all out, they're missing the point. Because if everyone is trying to take, then no one is there to give. But if we give first and learn second, that's when these mastermind communities really go to the moon. And I think if all of our members show up, how can I help someone today? Who can I meet at this event that I can help today? Who can I introduce, or who can I give a tool to for free with no ask? Then it all comes back to us in spades too.
And that's business. That's the game of business. And honestly, I've coached so many top executives that don't have the mindset of, how do I show up today and make the biggest contribution to the people around me? And that's actually a competitive advantage, because most people, even today, don't have that mindset, which is, how can I help other people? And they don't have a mindset of surround yourself with game changers. And I don't care how successful you are. I say this all day long. You're no better than anybody else. Like, you're a game changer, Cameron. You've got a roadmap to success around how to be a great world-class COO, what have you. I've got a roadmap to success around time mastery, whatever that is. It doesn't make you better than anybody else. It's like everybody has their own game changer, opportunity to serve others. So I would love for you to share, who are the game changers that you're going to surround yourself with going forward to help make your dreams come true?
For me, it's really interesting that I've believed that being a part of a mastermind community has probably made me everything that I am as a business leader today. My mastermind community started by being in the Boy Scouts and being in Cubs and being in a church youth group, and then joining the golf club and being around all the members at the golf club, and then getting involved in College Pro Painters was a franchise network, then getting involved in a fraternity, then getting involved in the Entrepreneurial organization. And then I've gone to the main 5-day TED conference for 11 years. I've been in the Genius Network for 8 years, Strategic Coach for 7 years, Baby Bathwater 4 events, Mastermind Talks 5 years. So I believe that for me, it comes from being immersed in these other communities. So I've gone to 4 different mastermind groups, different ones, because I call it ideas having sex. That if I go to a Baby Bathwater event in Croatia, a Wayfinders event in Uganda, a Mastermind Talks event in California, and a Genius Network event in Arizona, I pull all these random ideas together from these different groups, and those ideas have idea babies. So I'm trying to keep myself plugged into these different connecting groups. Right now, some of it's plugging myself into the Middle East. I'm now resident of Dubai. My company is now based in Dubai, and I'm plugged into this massive entrepreneurial ecosystem that is absolutely on fire. I look at Dubai, Austin, Texas, Bali, and Portugal as 4 entrepreneurial hotbeds right now. But the amount of money and ideas coming out of Dubai is blowing my mind. So it's by putting myself into these different communities that are outside of where I normally do business, I think is very powerful too.
And yet you're still able to run your business, and it's a global business.
Yeah.
And you can be based pretty much anywhere in the world. So
yeah, I'm talking to you from Mexico right now. We have members of our COO Alliance from 17 countries. We have members of the Ops Spot from 14 countries. but we've got Wi-Fi and laptops. It's an exciting time to be able to do all this stuff. When I first heard about you, it was 20 years ago. I was trying to figure out where it was, and it was Brian Scudamore, the founder of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, mentioned this CEO coach in Vancouver named Nancy McKay. And all you were doing at the time was coaching some CEOs. You hadn't started the McKay Forums, but he mentioned your name as this real, and I didn't understand what CEO coaching was. It wasn't a thing back then. You were absolutely on the forefront.
Thank you for that. It's been it has been 2 decades. Hard to believe that time has gone that fast. Let's talk about the 3 things that you have done to help you become a successful human being.
Well, one for sure is these entrepreneurial mastermind communities. I've invested, if I was to quantify without exaggeration, at least $100,000 or at least $500,000 have I spent over the last 15 years in being involved in mastermind communities. And I could literally I can draw it all out. That's not an exaggeration. So that's one, plugging myself into these mastermind communities where I get at least a 10x return. Number 2 has been working on what I call the soft skills of leadership. So really working on my skills around things like situational leadership, delegation, managing conflicts, communication, kind of all of the executive functioning skills, working really hard on that. And then the third is probably that book, Leadership and Self-Deception, where I've really tried to read some books to help me see myself from a perspective and realize that the feedback or negative criticism I hear about myself is great feedback. I used to get very upset about it or get my back against the wall. And now I'm starving for feedback because I get all the praise because I'm doing all this speaking or I'm on this global stage. I don't even read the praise anymore. I'm really looking for that constructive criticism that I can improve on. So I think that's been a big growth for me is starting to embrace that and see that, you know what, that's pretty accurate. There's some good truth in all that stuff. And then how do I continue to grow?
And how do you, which is remarkable what you've accomplished, and it's fascinating to hear you talk about the many, many masterminds that you're involved with. And yet the biggest objection we get when we talk to CEOs about joining a peer group, whether it's a McKay peer group or any peer group, because the world needs more peer support, is I don't have time. There's just no way I can free up 5 days of my time to surround myself with 14 game changers. What's your take on that?
2 parts. Number 1, every single personal relationship we've been in, whether dating, guys, women, whatever, every dating relationship we've been in has helped grow us as a human, right? If I think of every woman that I've ever dated in my life or my marriages that I've had, I've always grown and evolved from all of those. I'm very thankful for those relationships that help me grow. That's one thing that happens to you in a mastermind community is you grow because you're surrounded by all these other people that you just get a different sense of all aspects of your life, business and personal. So that's number 1. The second one is in October of 1994, I heard about the Entrepreneurs Organization. It was called YEO, Young Entrepreneurs Organization at the time. And I was like, I don't have time to join. And this guy, John Mara, said to me, if you don't have time to join YEO, then you have to join YEO because the business is running you. You're not running the business. And I was like, whoa. So I went to a lunch at John Mara's office, which was at the Hong Kong Bank Tower in Vancouver at the time for Vantage Securities. And this woman, Joan Mara, who happened to be John's wife, was running the session. And Joan walked me through a kind of a mock session. I got to test drive it. And I was full on addicted. As soon as I got to try it, I was like, I'm in, I'm all over this stuff. And they were right. Like the reality is if you're not working on the business, then you're working in the business. It's all about, as Stephen Covey said, sharpening the saw, right? We need to step back. So how many hours a month is a McKay Forum? 3 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours?
We don't meet monthly. So we meet 6 times a year for a day and we do a 2-day retreat. So it's 8 days.
So 8 days, 8 days out of 220 operating days, it's less than 4% of your year, which still gives you 96% of the time to be working and being busy, right? Like if a person, the COO Alliance is 3 hours a month, that's 1.7% of their operating on a 40-hour work week. If you can't dedicate 1.7% of your year, you're really missing the opportunity. So I think leaders need to cut that excuse, come up with a better excuse.
Fantastic message for us to wrap up with. Thank you so much, Cameron, for being on the podcast today. And honestly, what really inspires me about you is that you have achieved mastery in this area of COOs, and your book honestly was a game changer for me. I've recommended to every CEO that talks to me about, I think I need to bring in a COO, or it's not working with my COO, because it's just such a fantastic roadmap. So congratulations on your success and the impact you're having on your communities. Thank you for being a fellow CEO that's bringing business leaders together. We both believe the world needs more peer support, and so grateful to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate it. I feel like I'm just getting started, but thank you. If you liked that video, you're going to love more here at watchcameron.com.